Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about in-flight emergencies. What are they? And we have an example of one today. So the in-flight emergency we're going to be talking about is an engine failure, and more specifically an engine failure while at cruising altitude. So let's say you're flying around with your instructor, right? You're flying around, you're doing maneuvers. All of a sudden, your engine fails. You start sputtering, cowling starts shaking, something starts happening, and all of a sudden your engine just cuts off and dies on you. What do you do, right? You're gonna want to know what to do, right? So it's gonna be a scary situation at first, for a lot of pilots, especially as a student pilot. You're not gonna really know what to do, but that's why they build checklists for us, and that's why we learn to deal with situations like this prior to actually coming up on a specific situation like an engine failure. So, like I said, there are steps in place in the pilot's operating handbook, and you have other resources to be able to go about dealing with that issue. At first, you're going to want to, figure out how to get that engine restarted. So that's going to be the very first step. How do you get the engine restarted? If you can't figure out how to resolve the situation, or that doesn't work, there are other steps to go about what to do next. And sadly, the thing that you have to do next is a forced landing. That's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to put it down in a field, or you're going to have to put it down at the closest possible place you can do so and still do it safely. So you're going to have immediate action. That's going to be what you need to do immediately. So as soon as that engine cuts off, as soon as it happens, you're going to have a couple things that you have to do immediately. First and foremost, you're going to want to stay in the air, right? So you want to stay in the air as long as possible so that you can figure out what to do next. And the way to do that is following this first checklist of the immediate action checklist. So very firstly, you're going to pitch for airspeed. The airspeed you're going to pitch for in the pilot's operating handbook for the Cessna 172, it states that you're going to pitch for 68 knots. So your knots indicated airspeed is going to be 68 knots. That's going to be the very first thing you do. The second thing you do is you're going to take that fuel shutoff valve and you're going to turn it on. You're going to push it all the way in. Third, you're going to take your fuel selector valve and you're going to put it on both. If you had it on right or you had it on left for whatever reason, trying to balance out the airplane, you're going to want to put it on both. You're going to want to have as much access to fuel as you can to get that engine restarted. Fourth thing you're going to do is you're going to turn the fuel pump switch on. That's going to be the fourth thing you do. It's very important that you do that as well. Step number 5 is your mixture control. You're going to push that in all the way into full rich. If the engine hasn't already restarted, because some of these things might already just help the engine restart once it starts getting access to fuel if it didn't have it prior. Step number 6, you're going to turn that magneto switch to both. You want to give the engine as much electricity as possible so you can give those spark plugs as much spark as possible so you can really get that engine started. And that's if the propeller is still spinning. If the propeller has completely stopped spinning, then you're going to have to put it in start again. You're going to have to restart cranking that motor, trying to get it restarted. Step number 7, you're going to turn the fuel pump switch off. So this is just a couple notes for a couple of those prior steps. For step 6, if the propeller is windmilling, you're not going to have to, turn the starter on. It's just going to restart on its own within a couple seconds. Note for the steps number 7, if the indicated fuel is low, it's going to immediately drop to 0, and that's a sign of a failure of the fuel pump. So just put it back in the on position. Now you know that there's something wrong with it. Those items in bold, let's go back to that. So those items in bold are going to be memory items. Those are items that you're going to want to commit to memory. That way, if this situation ever does arise, this is the stuff you want to do immediately. So that way you can get the airplane flying again. You can get the airplane in that best glide speed, so then you can do what is required next. Okay, so worst case scenario, right? You do your immediate action, it doesn't work. Okay, so now The engine's not restarted. What's the next step, right? So the next step is going to be your remedial action, the action following your immediate action. So if the immediate action doesn't work, you're going to have to do this. And what it's going to end up leading you to is, like I spoke about earlier, is going to be your forced landing. So there's an acronym in the King Private Pilots course that is discussed, and it's ABC. And so what that stands for is it's very similar to that prior checklist. What it's going to be is you're going to set the attitude of the airplane for the best glide. So we already spoke about that. You set the attitude for the best glide. B, it's going to be your best field selected. So you're going to start looking around. You're going to try to find that best field that you can put the airplane down in. C is going to be your cockpit checks. So you're going to start doing those checklists. Start performing those checklists for descent and the emergency engine failure checklist. That way you can put the engine down, or you can put the plane down safely. So this is a great acronym from King Sky, or from the King's Private Pilot Program. But from my instructor and from a couple other things that I've looked into, I created my own mnemonic device, and that is remember your ABCDs. I know a lot of other pilots use this, but this is what helped me remember these steps the most, and that's so you remember your ABCDs. You know, we learned that as a kid, remember your ABCs. So this is just a really easy way for me to remember it. So A is it going to be airspeed as opposed to attitude, but it's going to be the same exact thing, pitch for that best glide. B is going to be find your best place to land. Same thing as best field selected. You're just going to try to find the best place that you can possibly put that airplane down in. C is going to be your checklist. So you're going to start performing those checklists for the emergency procedures if you have an engine failure. And then D is going to be declare. That's that extra step that gets added in there. While this is going on and you're trying to, operate the airplane when the engine's failed, nobody else knows what's going on but you and your passengers. So you need to declare, you need to call into ACC over the radio or call into 121.5 for the emergency channel and explain to them what's going on. Mayday, call in Mayday and just let them know what's going on with your situation. So this is just going to go a little bit more in depth with that. So, airspeed is going to be that first step. Pitch for the 70 knots, and the 70 knots is if you don't have any flaps in. If you have any flaps in, whether it's 10 degrees or full flaps, then your best glide speed is going to be 65 as opposed to 70. By doing this, you're going to give yourself the most time in the air. You want that time in the air to be able to figure out how to get down. It's also a great speed to land at. That's the last speed we're coming into when we're trying to land. So that's a very great speed to be at when you're coming in for an emergency landing or a forced landing. B is going to be that best place to land again. So you're going to want to scan the immediate area. You don't want to be looking off too far in the distance because you don't know how much time you're going to have. So you're going to look for the best place to land in the immediate area, whether that's a field or a dried lake bed or a parking lot that doesn't have, any obstructions like light poles or anything like that. You're going to want to try to find the best place to land immediately in your vicinity. And if you have any time, like extra time, if time permits you to do this, use that nearest function on your Garmin. Use it to your advantage. Click the nearest button and see if there's any airports around you. You might not be able to see them if it's, a small airstrip or just a small grass field gets used as an airstrip. But that's going to be your best place to land, and you're really going to want to use that as opposed to putting it down in a land or a field or a dried riverbed or lake bed that you don't really know what's down there. But if it's a charted airport or a charted airstrip, you're going to have a much better chance of having a safe landing. But a really good thing to remember is do not pass up a good landing spot just because there's a better one. There might be an airport a couple miles away that you think you might be able to make it to, but you're not going to want to risk it because if you have to go over a populated area, you might have to put it down somewhere around there and you have a much less chance of surviving if you put it around your buildings or something like that. So if you find a good place to land, don't skip over it. Don't try to go somewhere else to try to find a better place to land. If you find a good space, use it. Use it to your advantage. And then C, so we're going to just go over this checklist real quick. This is also coming out of the Pilot's Operating Handbook for the Cessna 172. Very good checklist. Now, this isn't supposed to be committed to memory, but it would be a good idea to remember the main points of this. So step 1 is going to be pilot and passenger seat backs in the most upright position. That's the safest position you can be in when coming in for a landing. The way that your spine and your body is positioned, that's what you're going to want to be in when you're coming in for a landing. Step 2 is going to be your seats and your seatbelt, so you're going to want to secure those. Step 3 is going to be the airspeed, as we talked about earlier. Step 4, mixture control, you're going to pull it out to idle cutoff. You don't want any fuel going to in the engine. The whole point of this checklist is to, when you're coming down for a landing, you don't want that engine to blow up or catch fire when you land, so that's what this is trying to prevent. Step 5, fuel shutoff valve, same thing, off. You don't want any fuel. Step 6, magneto switch off. You don't want any spark going to the engine. Step 7, wing flaps as required. So you're going to use these in your own personal, whatever you feel is best, but they do recommend using full flaps. Standby battery switch, that's coming off. Your master switch, you're going to turn that off. Once your landing is assured, you still want to be able to operate those flaps. Step 10, doors, you're going to unlatch those prior to landing. If you can shove something, in between that door to try to, land and not have that door get slammed shut and stuck shut, try to put something in there. Number 11, touchdown. So you're going to land with that tail slightly low, very similar to where you would be landing, how you would be landing at a normal airport or a normal landing. Brakes, you're going to apply those heavily. You don't know what's in front of you. There could be a ditch in front of you. There could be an obstruction in front of you, whether it's a tree stump in a field. You don't know. You want to stop as soon as possible. So put all your effort on those brakes. Just touching on the fact that, you don't want to turn that master switch off until your flaps are where you want them and your landing is assured, and you want to put something in that door. And then D for declare. So you're going to want to declare, as I said earlier, to ATC or 121.5. You want to declare that you are in an emergency situation. That way you can have these people help you. ATC and the emergency channel, they're supposed to be resources for you. Allow them to help you. They're there for a reason. And then once you talk to them, if they haven't already told you, squawk 7700 in your transponder. That's the emergency squawk code, and you should squawk that, because then that's going to light up on the map and it's going to tell them that you're an emergency aircraft, and they're going to give way to you. Once you eventually get on the ground, you're going to want to get away from the airplane as fast as possible. That's why we want to stuff, whether it's a cushion or a jacket, we want to stuff something in that door, because if we land, we want to be able to get out of the airplane as fast as possible. We don't know what kind of condition it's in after it's landed. We don't know why the engine has failed. You want to get away from that aircraft as fast as possible. So as soon as you get on the ground, you're going to go aft of the airplane. Don't go to the sides, and definitely don't go in front, because that propeller on the front, whether it's spinning or not, you don't know if it could start spinning. And that's essentially just a spinning blade. So you don't want to be anywhere near that. So once you get out of the airplane, go aft of the aircraft, get far away from the aircraft, so that way you are safe. If you were able to land at an airport, however, and you were able to land the plane in a good situation, you were able to land the plane and it's all still in one piece in a good condition, you're going to want to get that engine checked out. Whether it's your personal plane or the plane of your flight school, you're going to want to get that plane checked out, because you're not going to be able to fly without it, right? So you're going to want to take that airplane to maintenance so that it can get the proper repairs that it needs, so that we can become airworthy again and you can fly to wherever you need to go. If the forced landing does end up causing damage to the airplane, so if you put it down in the field, the wings do end up getting damaged, don't worry about it. The number one thing that's important is that you're alive, you're safe, your passengers are safe. It's just an object. It's just money. And money comes and goes. What's important is that you're alive and just you're safe. So just remember that. Don't worry about the aircraft if it's damaged. This is just a couple causes of engine failures. 20% of the engine out accidents are a result of fuel exhaustion or fuel starvation. So that's a pilot error. That's not the engine's fault. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong with an engine, but don't forget that a lot of them can be prevented by the pilot. So don't skip your run-ups, don't skip your pre-flights. Make sure you do those, because that's going to help you see those small problems before they become bigger. And then these are just my references if you guys want to check them out. So thank you very much for, coming to my presentation. Have a great day.